Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Hops. I'm with the National Operations Center of Excellence. Welcome to today's webinar on planned special events. This is part of the Spotlight webinar series that's organized and hosted by the Federal Highway Administration's Planned Special Events Outreach Program. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're very thankful to David Johnson and the team at Planned Special Events for organizing this fantastic webinar with two great presenters. A few things before I turn it over to David. First, we are recording. The recording of the webinar will be available via the NOCoE newsletter. We can put that in the chat box. We also release it on our website and YouTube page. So best thing to do is sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already, or follow us on YouTube and you'll get the recording right away to share with your colleagues. We will be doing Q&A. There's a Q&A box on your Zoom bar, so use that for questions for the presenters. That's where all those should go. The presenters will review them and then we'll answer them live at the end. If you have any issues or want to check in with anybody, use the chat box for that. So again, questions go in the Q&A, and anything technical or that you need assistance with can go in the chat box. We also have a closed captioning available. You can see that on your Zoom bar as well, if you'd like to use that. Again, thank you to David and the team at FHWA, and I'll turn it over to David Johnson to get us started.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate NOCoE's support, our continued support for our planned special event Spotlight webinar series. Always great working with NOCoE. So thanks, Adam. Appreciate everything you do for us. As mentioned, my name's David Johnson. I'm a team leader in the Office of Operations of Federal Highway. I oversee several program areas, one of which is planned special events. And we've really been ramping up our outreach of the program because of so many different large planned special events that are scheduled for our country. And we're really excited to bring our next iteration of our Spotlight series to you today. Like Adam said, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A pod, and we'll be sure to highlight questions for our two speakers at the end of their presentations. Also, if you feel comfortable, feel free to put in the chat your name and organization. And also, if you feel comfortable, your email address in case you want to network with anybody here, or if somebody has follow-up questions. It's a good way to engage with your practitioners and colleagues. Real quick, before we get started, I need to cover this disclaimer. So except for the statutes and regulations cited here, the contents of these presentations do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the states or the public in any way. The U.S. government and Federal Highway do not endorse products or manufacturers, so if those come up during the presentations, they are not considered endorsement for the government's purposes. And this presentation is being brought to you by outside entities. Their views and opinions expressed are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect those of Federal Highway or the U.S. DOT. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so just real briefly here, this is our agenda for the webinar. We do have two speakers today, and I'll do their bios here in just a minute. We're going to be talking with Jason Sims with Kansas City World Cup 2026 planning on their traffic management planning checklist activities. And then we also have Robert White from the Nashville DOT talking about multiple planned special events taking place in Nashville and the activities that the DOT there has been doing for planning and post-event debrief. And then, like I said, we will close out with a Q&A for the presenters. So as our speakers are going through, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A pod, and we'll be sure to highlight those at the end of the presentations. So again, my name's David Johnson. I'm with Federal Highway. I'd like to introduce our two speakers. First, Jason Sims has over 25 years of experience in the transportation industry. Jason Sims is an established and respected leader in traffic management operations, transit development, highway safety, and congestion mitigation and system deployment. Notably, he's credited with providing the operational vision for the Kansas City Scout Traffic Management Center, which has served bi-state region of Kansas City since 2003. Jason currently serves as the Director of Transportation for Kansas City 2026, a nonprofit organization overseeing strategy and delivering host city duties for FIFA World Cup 2026. Great to have you here, Jason. Thank you for being here. And secondly, we'd like to introduce Robert White with Nashville DOT. He's a Transportation and System Management and Operations Manager with Nashville DOT. He brings 25 years of transportation experience, IT experience, as well as cybersecurity expertise, serving as the ITS program manager with previously with the Vermont Agency of Transportation and Safety and Mobility Program Manager with AASHTO. He holds an electrical engineering BS degree from Tennessee State University and a master's in managing innovation in IT from Chaplin College and multiple certificates and licenses. We're very fortunate to have these two speakers. Thank you to them both for taking time away from their busy schedules to talk with us on their planned special event activities. So with that, I will hand it off to Jason Sims. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Also, Adam, we are certainly grateful to have this opportunity to present on planned special events, how we utilize the checklist in our planning for the World Cup. Next slide. I think everyone is understanding the magnitude, but it's certainly very considerable for Kansas City. This is the largest event that we've ever managed. Next slide. Looking at our match schedule, we have 6 matches, a coveted quarterfinal match at our venue. We're the smallest market for the FIFA World Cup 26. Next slide. But we do have the 6 most match days duration. So as a small market with 26 continuous days, it does pose some challenges for the world's biggest sporting event. Our traffic management plan, I want to say that I won't be able to go through every piece of our traffic management plan. Next slide. But it's going to be important to understand that we do have the expertise outside of Kansas City, bringing in certainly some consultants that have helped manage multiple FIFA World Cups. But the planned special event checklist has been essential for people like me to get up to speed on executing an event of this size. The FIFA transport responsibilities, if you're in the World Cup planning, you understand these. They're responsible for the matches and everything that it takes to put on a match. The host city spectator transport, ticketed and non-ticketed, our fan fest, ride share, all the different components on the right side. So we're focusing our planned special event and our checklist to fulfill our host city transportation responsibilities. Next slide. We have already developed all of our work streams and subcommittees for transportation. This is how we've aligned for our subcommittees, and each one of those are going. I will talk about our transportation working group, which is considered a best practice, bringing a bi-state region together, over 100 agencies. But this is how we have outlined our subcommittees and work streams to manage the FIFA responsibilities. How do we plan? Certainly we utilize data to drive us, our data analysis, how it will impact our region, and then what mitigating measures are needed to have a viable plan. So as we look at the checklist, as I said, the traffic management plan goes through traffic flow, route planning, site access and parking, pedestrian access, traffic control, travel demand management, which is essential here in Kansas City, and transit service planning, and other factors that you plan for. I won't be able to go through all of the aspects today, but it's very important to realize that the transportation management plan did start with a lot of discovery in our initial planning and feasibility study, and our traffic management plan is in concert and going simultaneously with our implementation activities. So let's just start with some of the elements of the plan. We did submit, next slide, our concept to FIFA on March 31st. We're pushing towards our detailed concept, our detailed plan in October. How we look at our plan is our security, our operations, our workforce, and our communication. In Kansas City, we are one of our pillars is to provide a safe and seamless transportation plan. So no matter what service you get on, whether it's one of our transit partners or the KC 2026 transit system, that it's safe and seamless and is well coordinated. Next slide. Our tournament transportation services, things that we are thinking through are on your right-hand side. I'm not going to go through every aspect, but these are the components of our management plan that we will submit as a final, of course, in March of 26, but the detailed plan in October 25 to FIFA. Next slide. We do have challenges here in Kansas City. Kansas City bi-state region, of course, also it's a car-driven city. We have limited transit, if any transit to the stadium, no rail to the stadium and transit. So, and the distance between elements, 15 miles to downtown from our airport, and from downtown to the stadium is 10 miles. So about 25 miles from the airport to our stadiums. And our modal mix is tremendously different because we're using motor coach transit instead of people having the expectation of parking at the venue. Next slide. So how do we plan for those challenges? Let's start with some of our pedestrian access, our accessibility, and how we are putting the resources together to move the amount of people that we need to move. In the checklist, and I certainly recommend everyone to go through this in each facet of the checklist, but pedestrian access planning, being able to look at our control. There's going to be a lot of pedestrians from our rideshare facility. A lot of pedestrians have muscle memory at Arrowhead Stadium, so we're having to provide dedicated pedestrian crossings, which is new for our venue, and our shuttle bus service, making sure that we get them to the bus mall within the venue and through the last mile into their seats. Let's go. Next slide. We're transporting 23,000 spectators via transit. That is a tremendous different modal split for us. Estimated we'll have around 6,000 parking spaces out of 33,000 at Arrowhead Stadium. Traditionally, everyone drives. So it's going to be a major modal change. And we'll talk about a little bit of that in TDM and how we influence driver behavior, giving incentives to transit. But this is our understanding our spectator traveler profile. Next slide. This is our travel mode. So if you look, 34% will be going by KC 2026 bus. I'll talk about our bus system, but 12% coming from FIFA bus. So 46% is going to be arriving by transit. If you looked at this as a normal Chiefs game or event concert, traditionally it probably would be only about 5% for transit. So it's a major uplift for us in looking at this modal split. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is also in concert as we're planning for our venue. We also have an LATMP and transportation management plan for our FIFA Fan Fest. Roughly, they're about 15 miles apart. It's a World War I museum. We have had Super Bowl parades, and we are also have done the draft here at this same footprint, but it will look a little different over a 26-day period. Our parking lot analysis really is based upon scenario budget planning. Next slide. We look at our parking lot in fulfilling FIFA requirements, and then also what are the requirements of KC 2026 in rising in the world stage, leaving a lasting legacy as some of our pillars, and looking at match days versus non-match days. And then for the greater sustained impact, we're putting together a regional connectivity model so that we can realize the economic benefit of over $650 million in Kansas City and connecting regions in movements of transit that have never been seen before. Next slide. Our bus procurement, we solidified our bus procurement several months ago. We believe we were the first host city to solidify the resources for our bus procurement. We went through a very strategic strategy in developing the requirements for our bus RFP, and we have executed our contract for our bus procurement in 2024. Next slide. Our bus system is 200 buses minimum. We are going to add some different types, some ADA accessible buses, maybe some school buses for workforce, but it looks like it'll be around a 300 bus system. Just to give you context, all of our transit agencies combined in the Kansas City region, their assets are around 200 buses. So we're bringing in a completely new transit overlay to our existing partners to execute the World Cup. Let's look at some of the, you can have the best plans, but you have to look at traffic incident management, of course, and traveler information. Previously in Kansas City, I managed the Traffic Management Center for the Bi-State region in Kansas City Scout. Traffic incident management is one of our strong suits in Kansas City. Let's look at the next slide. So you look at the checklist. What are the things you need to evaluate, and tactics and bypass routing and quick clearance, and also in concert with that, how do you inform the public, and also how do you influence the public to make the decisions needed best for the traffic management plan. Our mobility stakeholders is essential to, as part of the plan it outlines, it's essential to engage them very early. We have a transportation working group that has been stood up for about a year, maybe a little bit more here in Kansas City, to talk through the World Cup. It has all of our transit partners, our DOTs, Federal Highway, FTA, all of the different partners, our MPO, and some of our active transportation partners. We have brought them together very early, started to talk through the plans very early, and getting their input to build lasting relationships with our stakeholders, including incident management, so that we're all working from the same playbook. We all understand and everybody feels that they have had input into the plan. We meet every month in our regional collaboration, bring everyone together every third Friday. One of our strategies is to have a sharing session, which has over 100 agencies on it. Then we drill down to our actual core working group, and we take the subcommittees in developing individual pieces of the plan from a monthly perspective. Next slide. Communications is going to be certainly and so important. Of course, we have a dedicated website, FIFA app. We're putting our own overlay on the FIFA app as a legacy item for a transit app in Kansas City. Our media, having good relationships, social media, of course, and our signage, utilizing Kansas City Scout, but also bringing in many variable message boards and wayfinding and signage to make sure that everyone has the great communication. Just a small tidbit from A.P. Finger from FIFA and her visit to look at the magnitude of bi-state region and how we are coordinating. She gave us I guess you would say, an attaboy as it relates to our engagement of our stakeholders by state. Next slide. Site access and parking planning, our lot assignment. We have identified our bus mall and our venue, developed our LATMP around the venue, parking area and designations, and we'll kind of take a look at that. But it's certainly important at your venue as you look at your site access and how you will execute transit. And for Kansas City, it's as we said, we're bringing in an overlay of over 200 buses. So how do we do all of the parking rides, all the different movements, all the different services, and make it efficient so that we can have high level of mobility in our region? Next slide. So going through the checklist, it goes through all of those different pieces, and it was a good reminder, if not a guide, into how we look at planning for those elements. Next slide. Traffic control, of course, freeway and logo streets. Our Fan Fest is right in the heart of Kansas City, Missouri. All of the street light coordination and planning, but then also our venue, all of our buses will be utilizing interstate. So it's a simultaneous planning project of freeway and arterial support. Next slide. Let's just kind of look at Arrowhead, just high level. If you look at our allocation for parking, all of the different colors are where parking is reduced. So you can see how our stadium and the demand as relates to FIFA has really taken up 80% of our parking in the venue. So we're having to plan to move over 23,000 people to the stadium via transit. The challenges are it's a different mode. Our region, of course, is a car-driven region. Looking at the profile of the people, maybe have never driven it, and always looking at how congestion and how it relates to the actual venue and the surrounding arterials around it. We do have multiple tools we're optimizing and actually redoing our rideshare services. TDM is going to be essential. We're trying to get as many parking spaces as we can to minimize the demand, our PVR for how many people we have to move via transit, and working closely with PD and safety and security to maximize the local area transportation management plan around the venue. Next slide. And then our traffic route planning. This is probably what we're most involved in currently right now, traffic flow and routing. Next slide. Looking at the checklist, freeway and arterials, maintaining alternate routes, and local traffic routes. So you may have people who don't even want to attend the World Cup. They don't want to be disturbed. They want to be able to get to their hospital visits, get their children to school, all of the different pieces. So also maintaining a high level of service for residents who don't want to participate, but also accommodating all of our out-of-town visitors and make sure they have a very high experience in encountering transit and well-coordinated, safe and seamless experience getting to the venue and getting to our Fan Fest. Emergency routes, background accommodations, and transit accommodations. Next slide. Looking at our local area transportation management plan, we could go through 30 slides. This is a comprehensive plan around the Arrowhead Stadium. Also, we have a comprehensive LATMP around our Fan Fest. And those are evolving plans, making sure all the stakeholders are comfortable, making sure the residents. So there's a lot of TDM work that is going to go into this, but we have an evolving plan for our transportation management plan around our two serviceable sites. Next slide. Let's look at travel demand, and this is the last slide, and I'll kind of bring up a few things, but let's look at travel demand management and transit service planning, providing incentives to ride transit. The parking at Arrowhead 7 will probably be at a premium cost, so making sure that if we have fares, if we have parking passes, all of those things are incentivized to ride transit, and the journey time it would take to drive, or the cost of it, everything being incentive to transit. Event patron incentives and multi-car and HOV incentives as well. Travel demand management, our strategy. We did present a full webinar on our travel demand management strategy. Let's just take a look at a slide or two on this. We have developed our stakeholder and working groups. That has been very essential. We do put out communication every month and host a open transportation planning information sharing. We've done market research and surveys, statistically valid surveys, trip planning tools. We've looked at operations and best practices for some of our larger events, and use those lessons learned into our travel demand management. Let's next slide, define all of our stakeholders and our audiences for travel demand management. And that process will go on for an entire year. We're at 1 year to go. And we've already started those travel demand management philosophies in our region. And that will go all the way up into the tournament so that we can influence the behavior of our travelers so they can get the best experience. That's the bulk of the presentation. I want to say that we have gone into the implementation activities for this plan. We're doing detailed operational RACEs with every partner. When I say detailed, you're talking about 200-300 lines of responsibilities, accountability, coordination, and information. Going through that with each of our partners, making sure that we have a great operational plan in concert with us planning for traffic management. We're also looking at implementation, setting up our tabletop exercises, planning for those ahead of time, and using major events in Kansas City to test out some of our transit movements. We'll be utilizing the season for the Chiefs to look at some new rideshare concepts and making sure that we can refine those before the World Cup. So those two activities, traffic management planning, getting to our mobility plan with FIFA, and implementation have to go together. That's all I have, David. And as far as presentation, certainly look forward to answering any questions.
Thanks, Jason. That was really good. I appreciate you running through some of your activities and really kind of going through the checklist, which is a resource that Federal Highway put out several years back that we're looking to update. I did post a link in the Q&A. There was a question from somebody that asked where they could get the checklist. I posted a link to that. If you're interested in it, I encourage you to take a look at the checklist. It really does help organize some of the preparation activities, and then it goes through the day of activities and then some of the post-event activities as well. So it's a really comprehensive checklist that practitioners can run through as they're preparing for a planned special event like the World Cup. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A pod, but we're gonna follow up at the end of Robert's presentation to answer questions. So hold tight, Jason. We'll get back to you here once Robert is finished with his presentation. So
look forward to it.
Thanks again, Jason. Appreciate it. And with that, Robert, I will hand it off to you so you can share all of the excellent things that Nashville DOT are involved in right now with planned special events. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, David, and thank you for this opportunity to present. Again, Nashville DOT is a relatively new organization. It used to be Nashville Public Works, and it was just formed to try to assist the city with all the special events that take place within the city. So next slide, please. So basically, just give you a little background. This is what, on average, Nashville hosted in 2024, and this is what we expect to host in 2025. Next slide, please. These are the average number of events, as well as the attendance. And trust me, unlike what the previous speaker talked about, where they were kind of spread out in Kansas City, Nashville, all the event and venues are within a 5-mile radius. So you can imagine when you have this many people coming within a 5-mile radius, what it can do to traffic and pedestrian flow. Next slide, please. So on May 10th, we had what we called an all hands on deck, in which we had over 20 major events occurring, 13 which were very large. And so we had to do special preparation with not only the police department, but fire, but all the events to try to make sure that we could get people in and out of all the different venues on that day, safely and effectively. Next slide. And one of the things that, I'm sorry, if you can go back to that previous slide, because one of the big things I wanted to talk about was the PIO. Our PIO team did an excellent job of getting messages out to media, news, everywhere for about 2 weeks before May 10th, warning people that traffic was going to be bad and to seek alternate routes to get to venues downtown, as well as to the 2 venues outside. And it worked so well that that even TDOT, Tennessee Department of Transportation, stated that they even saw, people seeking alternate routes on the limited access right away during that time to make sure they avoided downtown Nashville. So next slide, please. But this kind of gives you an idea of some of the major events that occurred on May 10th. One of the biggest ones was the Savannah Bananas. And for those who haven't heard, Savannah Bananas is a baseball team that's equivalent to like the Harlem Globetrotters of basketball. And so they held an event at Nissan Stadium that was sold out with 70,000. The other big one was number 11, Keith Urban. All the major stars who own bars on Broadway, they like to do what we call impromptu concerts. And so he decided to do an impromptu concert on Broadway. So you had people not only coming in wanting to see him, but also his wife, Nicole Kidman, who was just mingling around in the crowd. So that really created a lot of fun for us. Next slide, please. This was kind of the attendance by venue. The steeplechase, which is west of Nashville, probably about 10 miles out, it's in a big park. But of course, all those people who attended the steeplechase wanted to come in. And the other big one was the Nashville Soccer Club, which is at Geodis Park, which is about 5 miles from downtown. But all these other events were taking place, right downtown within a 6 to 8 block radius. Next slide. And this was kind of going back to what I stated about the PIOs. One of the big things that we promote are scooters and EVs. And we kind of looked at how many people actually reserved or jumped on scooters to try to get around. And we saw an increase we saw a quadruple increase of people utilizing scooters to get around to the major events during this time. And this kind of shows you the numbers as well as the events. And the big thing I want to point out is that number 2 on this map is Nissan Stadium. As you can see, there are only really 3 accesses to it. And that purple one in the middle, that's a pedestrian bridge. And so during events at Nissan Stadium, that pedestrian bridge, as well as the 2 commuter bridges on both sides, the Korean Veterans Boulevard to the right and the one up top of Woodland Street, pedestrians will basically take that over. So MMPD have to block those off to make sure that buses, as well as some local traffic, can get through on those. Next slide. And this kind of shows what happens as the different venues change, but you can still see that the ridership numbers were still up tremendously on those scooters. And so this was kind of one positive aspect, is that people actually listened and didn't try to drive into downtown and saw alternate ways to get in. So we're really pleased with that effort. Next slide. This kind of gives you a view of Broadway during the day when there's not a lot of people. And one of the things I really want to point out is you see those silver bollards that we actually put up. Those silver bollards were put up in response to like what happened in New Orleans and other cities where you had people just deciding they want to drive in the crowds. But one of the other things that we found out that worked well is that those bollards actually prevent people from flowing into the streets until the sidewalks really get over. So it kind of had a double safety effect that we really like. Next slide. And this is what happened May 10th that evening. As you can see, people just start flowing from the sidewalks into the streets. And then at that time, MMPD has to start shutting down Broadway to prevent traffic from flowing, to save pedestrians, and allow them to move freely from section to section. This is looking west toward Vanderbilt. Next slide will show you what it's like looking east toward Nissan Stadium and lower Broadway. And that picture is actually taken from the balcony of our downtown TMC. And it says police. So whenever I'm staffing it, I was down there last night because we're now doing the CMA Fest. And it's kind of nice. If I ever want a free drink, people are more than willing to throw up free beers to us when we're standing on that balcony. Next slide. So we have 2 traffic management centers that we just implemented in October. The one that I was just showing you from downtown, next slide will be, which I'll talk about. This is our primary one at our headquarters. And the next one is, if you see that where it says police, kind of over to the left next to that dark blue building. That's our downtown TMC. And I really couldn't get a good picture of it because it's narrow, but I just wanted to emphasize that building is owned by Garth Brooks. And Garth Brooks, who is a champion of MMPD, thank goodness for having a country music star, he actually donated that space to MMPD and to NDOT. So the police have a, thank you, yep, that shows it better, and you can see it just off to the right. The police have a station down on the bottom and in the basement. That second floor is where our downtown TMC is at, and then right above it is where Garth Brooks' wife films her cooking show. So it's always nice to go down there because it's always nice smelling food, and we do get some benefits sometimes. If she has something left over, she'll bring to us. But you can also see one of the things that's really happening on Broadway is that as stars have started to buy out, these buildings, they know that they can't build laterally, so they're building up. So you can see there, like Garth Brooks Bar, he has a stage on each one of these floors, including that balcony, and just about all the buildings downtown are that same way. So that just increases more people coming into downtown Nashville. Next slide. So our May 10th objectives, our TMC, we were primarily tasked with monitoring traffic conditions, working with MMPD. If MMPD noted any signals that were like going into flash, or if they were having problems taking control, they would contact us, as well as they would also contact us to say, hey, these streets are now just totally congested. Can you go into Google and Waze and shut them down, or virtually close them, to try to help route whatever traffic is going around. And that included also ride shares, because we did work with the ride share companies to say, hey, you're not going to get people downtown during this time. We're going to actually geofence you from actually being able to get into downtown. So just be prepared for it. So we work very closely with MMPD as well as the fire department, because the fire department their dispatch center would actually contact us to say, hey, how can we get a fire, a fire or an ambulance to this location? And so we would actually look on the maps and then look at our cameras and start giving those guys routes so that they could get there in a more timely fashion, which worked out really well. And with all of our cameras, we made sure that we didn't capture any personal identifiable information, which is, as everybody knows on this, is a hot topic these days. So yes, next slide, please. So again, this is sort of the collaboration we did with fire and MMPD. The next slide, please. So NDOT, this shows our NDOT responsibility, which is basically just to monitor the special events, and then of course respond to whatever request that we got from MMPD. The MMPD special event police department, they actually have a team called the special events, and that's all they do is just work with downtown partnerships. They review all the permit applications to make sure that everything's in place, showing what needs to be closed, how many officers are needed at these locations, to make sure that safety is prime one. Next slide. And this kind of shows you that during that planning, NDOT also has parking enforcement. So as MMPD starts to shut down Broadway, our NDOT enforcement will actually come in beforehand to start telling anybody who's parked there, including deliveries, that they need to be moved, and they need to be moved now, or they will be towed. So that's one of the activities that MMPD really values NDOT for, is that making sure that we can clear out vehicles off of the street before they start to shut down the streets. Next slide, please. And this is what happens when you don't have any type of activities. This video is from when Vanderbilt beat Alabama, and that little triangle, that's the actual goalpost that they march from the stadium 4 miles away down West End to Broadway. And then that goalpost was eventually thrown into the river. But if you remember going back, that I was talking about how Keith Urban did an impromptu concert. Whenever any of the stars decide that they're going to do an impromptu concert, this is what happens to Broadway. So that's what I'm saying, working with and making sure that you plan out with with event organizers ahead of time so that you don't have these activities. And the nice thing about it was this video was taken from the MMPD police helicopter, and you can see they're just passing it right over the MMP vehicles, because the MMPD, they were blindsided by this, and so there was nothing they could do other than just try to get vehicles down there to try to help assist with getting that crowd to get that goalpost to the river so they could disperse them after it. But again, we see this on a regular basis, especially during the summer, where major stars who own bars like Kid Rock, Blake Shelton, Keith Urban, Luke Bryan, when they decide they want to do an impromptu concert on Broadway, this is what it looks like. So again, eventually this goalpost makes it to the river and you'll see the crowd starting to disperse. But it's a pretty neat thing. If you want to see the whole video, including the police commentary, just Google it on YouTube and just say Vanderbilt, Alabama game aftermath, goalpost heading to the river. So again, this was some of the responsibilities that we had, that the TMC had. And we had forms that we had to fill out, basically documenting any type of activities or any type of abnormal event applications that we could use as follow-on. And again, the biggest thing that we have is that we have, like myself, I'm a Google content manager, so I can go right into Google and make changes on the fly for any type of road changes. And I'm working on getting all of my TMC operators. They currently have the ability to go into Waze to do it, but not Google yet. And as most of you know, Google, even though Google owns Waze, Google still treats Waze as a separate entity. And so that's why if you have two phones and you want to have some fun, put in an address in Google and put in an address in Waze, and I guarantee you they'll give you different driving directions to that same address because of because how they treat things. But next slide. And this was MMPD responsibility. And again, the nice thing that we're talking about is that one of the things we work on at MMPD, just to give you an idea, it takes 50 officers to shut down Broadway for 4 blocks. And what I mean by that is they'll have 2 officers on each side of the street. They'll have 2 officers in 2 vehicles. They'll have 4 officers escorting those 2 vehicles and the crowds so that they can do that wedge. You probably really didn't see it in the video. What they do is at every intersection, they use their vehicles to create a funnel so that they can funnel the traffic. So they can funnel pedestrians into those to help them get across the cross streets on Broadway, because we do keep the cross streets open for not only transit, but also for other transportation purposes. And I can tell you from firsthand, just watching, there's not enough natural selection going on during some of these events, because I've seen people just come stumbling out of a bar, ignore the police, and just walk right into an intersection when there's a semi coming down a hill, and the poor semi has to slam on brakes to try to stop from running them over. So that is a big challenge, and one of the things that we're going to be doing going forward. In fact, we just installed LiDAR on all of our intersections on Broadway so we can do pedestrian counting, and we're going to use that to actually be able to assist MMPD going forward, like what's happening now with the CMA Fest, to say, hey, pedestrians are now starting to overflow. You guys need to start shutting down now versus waiting until it really gets bad, so that they don't have to utilize 50 officers. They can utilize 20 officers to shut down Broadway, and those other officers can do what they really need to do, which is law enforcement and keeping people in line. So next slide, please. So the biggest thing for the conclusion is that last bullet, no complaints. Because we work so well with all of our major partners, we had no complaints when Nashville's population almost doubled during this time, and with a quarter of that being downtown. We had some issues with, of course, you're going to have some issues with public transit because they just can't get there because of traffic. But overall, I have to say, working ahead of time, working with your PIOs to get that information out, saying, don't come downtown, and don't try to come downtown in your car, seek alternate ways, park outside the city and ride share to a public transit location or something like that. It worked very well. And I was very surprised, because normally on the weekend, Broadway, MMPD normally will keep Broadway closed until like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But after all these events on May 10th, they were actually able to reopen Broadway at 1:30 a.m., which also made my life easier because I got to go home early versus staying there until 3 a.m. in the morning. So again, I can't stress enough, work with your partners, MMPD, fire, as well as we also work with Nashville Downtown Partnership, which is all the businesses, hotels, and we work with WeGo and everybody else to try to make sure that we're hearing all the concerns, and we're also voicing our concerns as well when we have these type of events. That's it in a nutshell, and be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. Apparently, Nashville is the hot spot to be for planned special events. So nice presentation. Looks like we do have a couple questions in the Q&A pod, so I'll invite Jason to come back on camera. Looks like you gentlemen are getting some lots of claps and good response here. So from Laura Wright, I can answer that first one. What size of event does the checklist help with? There's really no set, parameter for the size of the event. Generally, if you know it's coming ahead of time and it's something that's planned, the checklist is going to help you go through some of those preparation activities. It covers, I would say a smaller event of a few thousand people all the way up to something like the World Cup or Super Bowl. So there's really no, set limit on what the checklist will help you with. It's just a good list of best practices that your agency can use to help you with your planning activities. I think the second question, though, from Laura is really good, and it's something that comes up pretty frequently across several different program areas. And Robert, this is directed towards you, but Jason, feel free to chime in as well. How do you go about getting the ability to update the maps on Google and Waze? Can you kind of discuss the process that you went through, Robert, and Jason as well, on how you accomplished that?
I'll be happy to go first. I was fortunate in that during my time in Vermont, I actually attended a USDOT webinar in Utah. It was a road weather management. And at that time, the Waze app developers, there were 4 struggling graduate students from Israel who attended it, and they had just implemented Waze in Israel, and they were trying to find out a way to get Waze implemented in the US. And when they heard myself and my counterpart from New Hampshire presenting on how we were creating a regional 511 system, they came up to us afterwards and asked if they could meet with us at lunch. And so we were sitting down at lunch talking about them with different opportunities. And all of a sudden their phones started ringing. They all looked at each other and started smiling. They'd just been bought out by Google. So they went from struggling graduate students to, multimillionaires. And at the same time, so we continued to work with them, and we got them implemented into New England, as well as Texas, Florida, and California. And they were so appreciative that they actually got us Google content management rights to be able to go into Google to edit it. And when I retired from Vermont and moved to Asheville, I had forgotten all about it. But when I came to Nashville, I contacted them to say, hey, look, I'm working in Nashville and we got all these special events and stuff. I really need access to be able to shut down streets, on the fly when MMPD does it, or like when we have just flowovers. They said like, oh yeah, we remember you, no problem. And so they gave it to us. But to answer your question is, they have a process in line where you have to do so many edits before they start to give you privileges. And that's, please contact me offline and I can share that information with you.
Yeah, very similar. Very similar, David. The relationships are essential. I'm gonna have to get on Robert's level of relationship, but FIFA did put out what they call ambassadors or creators and Waze contacts for every region, and we've been working through those contacts and how you develop those contacts and the amount of plans that you submit for future closures, and it gets you that equity to then become a actual editor.
Yeah, there's actually a good follow-up here from Dale. He said, did I hear Robert say it's important that TMC staff get approval from both Google and Waze to inform which streets may suddenly be closed to vehicles? Yes, that is correct. And if so, has Jason already made that request for KC for their FIFA hosting in 2026?
Yes.
So yeah, that's a good follow-up, and thanks for the question, Dale. So Robert, thanks for mentioning road weather management. I'm glad that opened up the opportunity for you to be able to edit some of these mapping applications. So if you'd like to follow up with Robert on a little bit more detail, I'm sure he'd be happy to discuss that.
Also, David, one of the other strategies is providing the outputs of the traffic management center or whatever your data source is. My time in the DOT with Casey Scout, we would provide Google, provide the major mapping. We would give them the XML, give them the rights to the information so they could process it in real time. That does also develop equity and partnership to get those editing rights.
Yep. Good point, Jason. Thanks. Kind of a follow-up to this also from anonymous attendee. Do you get different directions from Google and Waze? The answer is definitely.
Yes.
They use different parameters for their routing results. So
Yeah, no, I can actually answer that. Google uses crowdsourcing and like in cellular. Waze uses only their Waze users for input. And that was one of the challenges that we had in Vermont, was that, NRIX is a great platform, but when you don't have cellular communications, I can actually remember driving on I-91 North, close to the Canadian border, and just pulling over. And all of a sudden, just sitting there for 5 minutes and no other traffic passed me. And all of a sudden, NRIX started showing that whole road is closed. And they showed it closed just because I was the only one reporting.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's true. And then Bill, this is a if you can't tell, this is a pretty big topic right now, and it's something that we're discussing here at Federal Highway pretty extensively. And Bill really gets to the point of the issue here is if Google's reporting something that's closed and it isn't, how do you go about correcting it? And I would say, how do you go about correcting it if you aren't able to make changes like Robert is? And that's a big issue. That's something that we've been dealing with, and we are working with mapping companies on our data specification work for disruptive events, which would include planned special events, but also work zones, road weather, traffic incidents. So the answer to your question, Bill, is that there's no easy way to correct that in real time. And that's really the emphasis of where we're trying to get to is working with the mapping companies so that they don't put out incorrect driving directions, particularly for folks like CMV drivers, or that you can't just drive freight vehicles wherever the mapping applications tell them to go. So this is a big issue that we're working on internally at USDOT. But maybe I'll pass it back to Robert and Jason if you have anything else to add. How do you guys deal with incorrect mapping, results that operators or private vehicles come to you and say, this is actually, we have a really good example that's happening right now in Texas, where I-35 is showing a closure on the main line, but it's actually taking place on the frontage road. And I know that's an issue that TxDOT's dealing with, but I'm sure you both have examples as well. But how do you deal with that when you find out about it? Who do you reach out to, and what are your next steps?
Go ahead, Robert.
no, I was going to say, just going back to your original thing, one of the biggest challenges we have is that Google, even if the ATMS, or if you go in, or like if I go in and close a road, if they see traffic being reported traveling through it, they'll reopen it. And one of the challenges we have is a lot of times it will close roads, but we'll still allow local people who live in that area to go in. But as soon as Google sees any type of movement, they'll reopen it. So we have to go back in or I have to go back in until this road is closed to all traffic except limited limited people coming in, and Waze does the same thing. So it's an ongoing battle that I haven't found an exact solution to yet.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Robert, crowdsourced data, which does have very good outcomes, but it can also include some erroneous reporting and some erroneous data, which in turn will cause erroneous routing results. So yes, there's positives to crowdsourcing information, but it's not as monitored or standardized as something that would be like the work zone data exchange, where that's governed by a data specification. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with crowdsourced data where it can cause issues like we're discussing here.
Yeah, but just quickly, even with the data exchange, still have the same issues.
Yeah, and that's something we're working on with IT and NEMO as we develop the spec into a standard. We're hoping to close out some of those loops that we're still seeing issues with. Anything else on the mapping applications that we want to talk about? I know that's a big topic in and of itself, but anything else, Jason or Robert?
One thing I would add is for the World Cup, which is my focus, inviting them to be part of our truck. Having an ambassador or a Google representative within the traffic operations center to help in those areas. Live is going to be struggle regardless, but at least having an ambassador there would maybe expedite that.
Yep, good point. If you have any follow-up questions, I know Robert and Jason would be happy to chat with you on the ambassadors for some of these mapping applications and the processes that they went through. Not seeing any more questions in the pod. If you have anything, feel free to toss it in there and I'll cover it with our speakers. But we kind of mentioned data. On the topic of data, are either of you gentlemen seeing a gap in operational data as you prepare for planned special events? If so, what specific area or data would you like to see that would really help you with your planning activities?
I'll jump in. Well, data is essential in planning, but one thing that we've kind of struggled with, and I don't know if it's certainly a federal highway issue, is we're getting specific data for hotel occupancy, some of the renting houses, that type of data, Airbnb, all of those play a major part into where the clusters of people will be, and then being able to predict some of that information. There are some companies who are trying to do that prediction, but that level of data, transportation data, has been pretty good, but the level of planning data for where people will stay, where the clusters, their movements, how that many visitors will affect economic stimulus and businesses they will visit. It has been a challenge to really quantify that.
Robert?
Similarly for us, it's pedestrian. And if I could share my screen, I can show you a live LiDAR. And one of the things that we're doing with LiDAR now is that we're doing pedestrian counts. As I previously noted, we're actually installing LiDAR on Broadway to do nothing but pedestrian counts so that we can assist people, because we've had too many people being hit, too many pedestrians being hit and killed on our streets. And so we're actually now analyzing what we call near miss data to get a better understanding of where we need to do more enforcement, change speed limits, even put in what we call calming thing, which are speed bumps, in major areas. But that's one of our goals going forward. In fact, our second SMART grant, Nashville is going to be the largest LiDAR deployment in the country. And my goal is that all 900 of my signals downtown, and when we start doing updates to them, they're all going to be getting LiDAR, so we can continue that type of analysis.
Yeah, that's the LiDAR for pedestrians is a very interesting topic that I think would be is something that I'd like to cover maybe in a future webinar or something, Robert. That's interesting. So let's stay connected on that. Lots of questions now. So thanks to everybody for putting in some of your thoughts and questions. Dave mentioned, and it looks like Jason, you'd like to answer this live, so I'll turn it over to you first. Is there ongoing organized collaborations between host city DOTs regarding World Cup 26 planning?
Yeah, so it's essential. Bringing your stakeholders together, of course, KDOT and MoDOT are essential partners. Understanding their standard transportation plan, what closures, the resources they bring to our incident management process. So we bring our partners together once a month, and then we also have done individual operational races with each department on what their responsibility will be for the tournament down to the cone. So yes, it's important to have organized collaborations. The checklist, of course, encourages that and stakeholder engagement, and that's been a critical piece for us to make sure that we're coordinating with the DOT.
Yep, and I can agree because Nashville is also going to be hosting 3, including one team from Saudi Arabia, in which we already know they're going to have dignitaries attending, that we're going to have to shut down the interstate from the airport to the venue and return. So yeah, it's definitely important to be in tune with everybody involved.
Yeah, and Robert, you touched on a good point here. You know, this webinar is essentially covered, and Jason's presentation really covered the third part of our checklist for practitioners. And within that, we have VIP considerations for parking and routing and, you know, law enforcement activities for VIPs. So again, it's another aspect of the checklist that you can utilize in your planning. You're not always going to have dignitaries or VIPs or VVIPs, but generally, the bigger your planned special events get, the more likely you're going to be needing to deal with some of these VIPs, and that's a whole nother set of logistics that you need to plan for and consider. Thanks for your question, Dave.
One step further, David, as it relates to projects, it's essential to work with the DOT and the getting things to their step in planning projects that could benefit mobility and congestion for the World Cup. So, I mean, you're losing time if you're not out of time, if they're not already in. But we've been working with the DOT for really a year and a half in making sure the right projects move forward and that align with the traffic management plan for the World Cup.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, but in addition to that, also work with your tourism departments for match to your STIP.
Yeah,
Because your tourism departments have more dollars than they know what to do with, and they'll be glad to donate them to transportation projects that improve tourism events in your area.
great.
Great point, Robert. So the planned special event program here at Federal Highway was kind of rejuvenated with the solar eclipse that took place last year. And we held an in-person peer exchange to bring together some of the larger DOTs and MPOs in Kansas City, actually. And we brought tourism folks in because they're very powerful when it comes to communicating upcoming planned special events. They have a lot of resources and they also have a lot of connections. So something to consider as you're dealing with planned special events, loop in your tourism agencies and your contacts. And then again, Robert mentioned this, and I think Jason did too. Your PIOs, your public information officers, are critically important in communicating what you're doing. They have social media communication techniques that some of us in the field don't necessarily utilize or don't communicate things effectively. PIOs are trained in all that. So utilize these folks, utilize your tourism contacts, get a group of people together as early as you can to start talking through your checklists, as Jason mentioned. Let's see, we got some more comments from our anonymous attendee. I'm not sure what that one is referring to, but the second one, this person mentions it does take multiple Google reports for their mapping applications to update sometimes. So that is important to consider. Same with Waze as well. Waze takes multiple reports sometimes as well. Dale, let's see. I have an idea for a future webinar related to FIFA and Canada and US. Yeah, let's connect later, Dale. I'll send you my email here. For those who maybe weren't involved, we did do a mobility planning peer exchange. It was a closed invitation event with 11, I think 11 of the host cities had attendees. And we did talk about a lot of some of these topics that we're discussing here. And we would like to, again, we did have difficulties doing an in-person event in Seattle for the mobility planning peer exchange. But we would like to continue to try. If there is interest, and we're hearing many different agencies and folks who would like us to do an in-person event leading up to the World Cup, or maybe some other planned special events, feel free to reach out to me, or Sharon is also on screen. She supports the planned special event program at Federal Highway. We'd love to talk with you about planning something either virtually or in person. So feel free to reach out to either myself or Sharon. And thanks for the question, Dale. I'll be sure to put my contact information here. Let's see, some other I don't see any more open questions right now. Yeah, Jason, one thing you mentioned that I thought was really interesting is your procurement of buses. You mentioned Kansas City has 200 in their fleet typically, and you're going to be bringing in 300 just for the World Cup. Can you kind of go through the process of procuring a fleet of buses, and also what other rideshare companies have you kind of coordinated with as you've thought about procuring buses, but also what other transportation network companies like rideshare companies have you been in communications with leading up to your activities for planning for this?
Well, great questions. It's a whole webinar on how to procure buses, but we have been in contact with all of the rideshare companies. FIFA put on a great rideshare workshop that opened it up to each of the host cities to be able to have direct contact with Uber and Lyft and all of the TNCs. Those discussions are happening as relates. There's shuttle service that Uber is providing now that's quite interesting. There is looking at our rideshare as a more of a taxi operation. Those are discussions we're having. But if you look at the bus procurement, you have to establish what your PVR is first. How many people do you need to move, and what your level of service that you want it to be. So after we established that, we needed a minimum of 200 buses. Then you can decide, do you have drivers in your state? Do you have the ability to procure all of the different insurances? We went the route of having an all-in bus cost that provides the bus, the driver, the maintenance, and the fuel. So it's just a cost per day per bus. And also we looked at how many deadhead days would be for buses. What makes the most sense to get the most economic bus per day costs. So we're keeping a roughly 60 to 80 buses in the region on non-match days to assist with what we call regional connectivity and getting people from different points of our region so that we can realize some of the economic benefit. But I had a slide in there that showed the process that we looked at. And it did take several months for me to put my arms around contracting motor coaches, but we did get it accomplished and sign the contract. So.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Robert, did you want to touch on your coordination with some of the rideshare companies? Do you work with them as you're dealing with planned special events?
Yes, we geofence them.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say is we geofence them to keep them from just parking anywhere and waiting. Because what they're now starting to do is they're starting to catch on, and they'll actually turn their app off and pull into a space and then turn the app on. So we make sure when they turn the app on, it doesn't give them a rider.
Good point. Robert, you mentioned in dealing with all these planned special events that you have, it seems like there's a really good opportunity for improvements. Where do you see the greatest advancements taking place for planned special events? Is it on the technology side, or is it on the training side, or something else?
C, all of the above. I have one employee who works in the mayor's office. He's been there for 35 years. That's it. That's his primary job is he receives all special event applications and he does them all via paper.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So we are slow that the two maps that I showed you of the right of the two maps I showed you of the scooters, that's actually part of our new permitting online application process that I'm slowly bringing him into, because the whole goal of that is that we now want to put more onus on the event organizers to fill out the information versus him doing it on paper. So the whole goal is going to be is that we're moving over to an online application system where the event organizer will put in, I'm doing this event on this weekend. Here are the blocks and the streets that I need blocked off. Here's what I need for, for security support. Then once he hits submit, it'll automatically go to all the partners, fire, police, us, permitting, downtown partnership, everybody, so that everybody can weigh in and provide comments on that event versus like what happened to us last weekend, where we had an event, a permit on Broadway during NASCAR, in which they had a few actual NASCAR vehicles on Broadway. And part of the group was doing a motorcycle exercise. Well, at the last minute, they decided they didn't want to have enough security for it. And at the same time, the motorcycle riders decided to do burnouts on Broadway. And that created a big hazard for us. And so, if we'd known about this, we actually went back and we're now charging that event organizer to do the restriping on Broadway, but we're also going to fine them saying you went outside your permits. And they said, well, you guys didn't have anything to show for it. So that's going to be another reason why we're going to have this online for full documentation.
Jason, same question to you. Where do you see the greatest improvement that could be made, or greatest opportunities that we could achieve in planned special events? Do you think it's more technology based or training based, or like Robert said, a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think people, I guess, from an engineering background, gravitate more to the technical. And so I think the technical piece could be a little bit more beefed up in the checklist. But I believe that the checklist is great for people coming into planning that need to have just an understanding of the process. So if it's process driven, how to go through the process, I think would be a great addition to the checklist. If you look at it from a newbie perspective, it can be daunting. So how do you take that checklist that's so comprehensive and then apply it in real time?
Good point. Good point. Have you gentlemen both done tabletop exercises ahead of large events? And do you find those beneficial?
Tremendously.
Yeah.
Extremely.
Tremendously.
Yeah, we just did one last week for the CMA Fest.
Okay.
That a lot of, because each year we have to take down signals on First Avenue because they put a stage up there. And we basically shut down all of First Avenue for just pedestrian traffic. But what they don't realize is that when we take down that signal, those signals are tied in with second, third, and fourth, and the timing. So it throws the timing off. So yeah, there are a lot of things that we have to coordinate. And those tabletop exercises are extremely beneficial.
Yeah, everyone has a plan until you have something happen. So everybody has a great, robust plan. But the tabletop exercises really can poke holes into the plan, can see the maturity and capability of your partners. And it's certainly we have 8 tabletop exercises planned for the World Cup in different areas, but traditionally incident management is a great area to say, hey, here's the plan, here's our bypass routing, everything looks great on paper, so now let's make the worst possible scenario and see how we respond to those things, because in my experience over the last couple of decades, traditionally those things happen, and you have to be prepared, to the readiness of it all. You have to be prepared.
Yep.
Yeah, and they definitely give you those what ifs.
Yes.
Yep. Very good. everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see,
That's right.
Laura, how did you get the event venues to coordinate with you, so that you know the events are coming? You guys work with the venue, staff, specifically for, so do you work, Jason, do you work with Arrowhead Stadium staff?
Yes.
How
The,
did,
the,
is there a
yeah,
schedule that they post ahead of time so you know what's coming up?
of course, they're the Chiefs and the Arrowhead Jackson County Sports Authority complex are tremendous partners, but they want to see their events go well. As it relates to the World Cup, all of the sports teams are on our board of directors, so that's an easy fix for us to be able to access at the highest level of operations that coordination. But if you're not thinking World Cup, then in off season, you're going to have big concerts. You're going to have all of the different special events that the venue is trying to maximize their revenue. They want those events to go well, and if you're a partner that hasn't treated them, they will bring you to that table.
Right.
Yeah, same for us. The same for Nissan Stadium and Bridgestone Arena, as well as all the bar, all the major bars downtown. Because I had listed on there Barstool, which is a major bar just off of Broadway. That May 10th event, they had close to 4,000 patrons.
Right.
So yeah, you definitely have them involved. And we meet weekly with Nissan Stadium and Bridgestone Arena because they have so many different events and concerts that you have to stay on top of what's going on.
Right. I did put in the chat a link to our publications. This will take you directly to our planned special event publications tab that we have. There is a document for tabletop exercise instructions for planned special events. So I'd encourage anybody that's interested in doing some tabletop exercises to take a look at that publication. It is a little bit old at this point, but again, still a lot of useful information in that document. Sharon, I feel like I've left you out. Do you have any questions, or would you like to chime in on any of this before we wrap up?
Just that partnerships are key among police, fire, maybe your FBI, other types of agencies, non-traditional that you hadn't thought of. I had mentioned to Robert just before our call, in the San Francisco area, you need to know all your U.S. Coast Guard contacts because they can help you with all the ferries. They've got a good network on the water to help you. If we had lost any bridges in any kind of event, Golden Gate or Oakland or something, you need to have all those relationships in place before an incident occurs. So some of them just non-traditional partners. So I think the tabletops is an excellent, whether you have a big event coming up or not, it's an excellent exercise to go through and include all your big business owners, big sports event facilitators.
Yep.
Aaron, I want to comment on that as it relates to partnerships. It's hard to be an expert at everything. So when you're developing, or when I'm developing the plan for FIFA World Cup in Kansas City, active transportation, that's a huge piece. I could name probably 3 or 4 others, but having the partnership with Bike Walk KC or the different partners that do active transportation, bringing them in, not recreating the wheel and collaborating, then you become to have a well-articulated active transportation plan. But if that partnership is not there, or you don't treat them as a stakeholder, then you'll struggle and kind of recreate the wheel. So there's a lot of examples that I found that, if you have great knowledge of it, but you're not an expert, bringing those experts in and making them a true stakeholder with a voice, it has really propelled our mobility plan to the next level to be able to get that expertise as a stakeholder.
Yep. And David, I just want to comment quickly that we here in Nashville, we're actually utilizing that PSE plan. Our consultants are incorporating it into our not only our permitting process, but also all of our transportation control plans as well. and they will be providing you some feedback on some updates that need to be done to it.
Sounds great. That's exactly what I like to hear, Robert. Thank you so much.
And Sharon, that's why I changed my background. That's actually my facility in Vermont, my Coast Guard Auxiliary facility. And I can't wait to get back to someday.
David, I don't know how many consultants we may have on the call, but the checklist has helped me to keep our consultant partners honest. Understanding the different pieces, things that are recommended for work they will do. How does that align to what's really needed? And that checklist has really helped in that discussions.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, I appreciate you so much for the time that you shared with us. I know you're extremely busy. So again, honestly, thank you so much for the time you've spent with us and answering all the questions that came in. I think it's been very helpful for the attendees. If you have any questions or if you'd like to get involved in planned special events, there's my contact information as well as Sharon's. Also, something that came up is the data specification development that we're working on at Federal Highway. We are developing a road weather and traffic incident data specification for managing disruptions. If you're familiar with the work zone data exchange, it's a very similar process. So if you'd like to get involved in either of those activities, planned special events or data specification development, as always, feel free to reach out to myself or Sharon. Thank you for being a part of this webinar series. I saw strong attendance throughout the webinar, so thank you for being here and asking all your great questions. I'd like to thank NOCoE again and Adam Hobbs for hosting us. Fantastic job as always, as well as thank you for our contract support team with Vishali Shah for helping us deliver a seamless webinar as always. So with that, I will hand it off and close out this webinar. Thank you again. And everybody, please stay safe. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to any of our speakers as well as myself and Sharon. And we'll talk to you again soon. Take care, everybody.